Caitlin Clark was a name that many people were starting to recognize. At just 23 years old, she had already made a name for herself in the world of sports. Known for her incredible talent on the basketball court, Caitlin was not only admired for her skills, but also for her humble personality. She wasn't the kind of person who liked to flaunt her success or demand special treatment. In fact, most people who met her described her as down-to-earth and approachable. Despite her growing fame, Caitlin preferred to live a simple life. She didn't travel with bodyguards or wear flashy clothes. Instead, she spent her days practicing, working hard, and enjoying the little things in life, like grabbing a meal at her favorite local restaurant after a long day. On this particular evening, Caitlin had just finished an intense training session. Her muscles ached, her energy was low, and all she wanted was a comforting plate of food to recharge. So, she decided to visit one of her go-to spots, a cozy little restaurant tucked away in the heart of the city. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it had a warm atmosphere and served some of the best comfort food in town. Caitlin loved how the staff always greeted her with a smile, and the food never failed to hit the spot. For her, it was more than just a place to eat. It was a sanctuary where she could relax and feel normal, away from the pressures of being in the public eye. When Caitlin arrived at the restaurant, she walked in casually, dressed in a pair of faded jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun and she carried no makeup, just the way she liked it. She wasn't there to impress anyone. As she stepped inside, the familiar smell of grilled chicken and garlic bread filled the air, making her stomach growl with anticipation. The restaurant was moderately busy, with a few tables occupied by families and couples enjoying their meals. Caitlin approached the hostess stand, where a young woman stood flipping through a reservation book. "Hi," Caitlin said with a friendly smile, her voice soft and polite. "Can I get a table for one?" The hostess looked up briefly, her eyes scanning Caitlin's face. For a split second, Caitlin thought she saw a flicker of recognition in the woman's expression. But then something strange happened. Instead of smiling back or grabbing a menu, the hostess shook her head firmly. "Sorry," she said, her tone cold and dismissive. "We're not serving you." Caitlin blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. "Did I do something wrong? Is there a problem?" The hostess didn't answer. Instead, she turned her attention back to the reservation book, pretending Caitlin wasn't standing right in front of her. Caitlin felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment as she realized what was happening. She hadn't been denied service because the restaurant was full or because they were closing early. No, this was different. This was deliberate. And as Caitlin glanced around the room, she noticed a few of the waitstaff whispering and glancing in her direction. Some even smirked, as if they were sharing an inside joke at her expense. At first, Caitlin thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Perhaps the hostess didn't realize who she was and assumed she was causing trouble. Or maybe there was some policy she wasn't aware of. Hoping to clear things up, Caitlin tried again. "I'm sorry," she said, keeping her tone calm and respectful. "I don't understand. Can you please explain why I can't be served?" But the hostess refused to engage. She simply repeated her earlier statement. "We're not serving you." Her words were sharp, leaving no room for negotiation. Caitlin felt a lump form in her throat as the reality sank in. This wasn't a mistake. She was being turned away on purpose, and there was nothing she could do about it. Feeling hurt and humiliated, Caitlin stepped back from the hostess stand. Her mind raced with questions. Why was this happening? Had she unknowingly offended someone? Was it because of her fame? Or was it something else entirely? She considered confronting the manager or demanding an explanation. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't make a difference. The decision had already been made, and nothing she said would change their minds. As Caitlin turned to leave, she couldn't help but notice the stares of the other customers. Some looked sympathetic, while others seemed indifferent. A few even appeared amused, as if her rejection was entertaining to them. Caitlin kept her head down, trying to hold back tears. She had faced challenges before, on the court, in interviews, and even in her personal life, but this was different. This wasn't about proving herself or overcoming obstacles. This was about being treated unfairly simply because of who she was. And it stung. Walking out of the restaurant, Caitlin felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, but so did sadness and disbelief. How could something like this happen in today's world? She had worked so hard to build a career, to earn respect, and to stay grounded despite her success. Yet here she was being denied basic human decency. It was a harsh reminder that no matter how much progress society claimed to have made, discrimination and prejudice still existed. But as Caitlin sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, she realized something else too. This moment didn't have to define her. Yes, it was painful and frustrating, but it also presented an opportunity to rise above the negativity and turn this experience into something meaningful. As she drove home, her mind began to wander. What if she could use this incident to spark a conversation? What if she could shed light on the injustices that so many people faced every day? Slowly, a plan started to form in her mind. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would inspire countless others and leave a lasting impact on the world. Caitlin Clark sat in her car outside the restaurant, her emotions swirling like a storm. The rejection she had just experienced was still fresh, raw, and painful. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she tried to process what had happened. She replayed the scene over and over in her mind. The dismissive tone of the hostess, the whispers among the staff, the stares from other customers. It all felt surreal, almost like it wasn't real. But it was real, and it hurt more than Caitlin wanted to admit. For a moment she considered calling someone, her best friend, her coach, or even her parents, to vent about the situation. But something stopped her. Caitlin had always prided herself on being strong and independent. She didn't want to seem weak or overly dramatic by making a big deal out of this. Instead, she decided to take a few deep breaths and calm down. It's just one bad night, she told herself, trying to push away the lingering feelings of anger and humiliation. But no matter how hard she tried, the incident refused to leave her thoughts. As she drove home, Caitlin couldn't help but think about why this had happened. Was it because of who she was? Was it jealousy, resentment, or was it something else entirely? She knew that fame came with its own set of challenges, but she had never expected to face outright discrimination. After all, she wasn't the type to demand special treatment or act entitled. In fact, she went out of her way to stay humble and relatable. So why had they treated her so poorly? When Caitlin finally arrived home, she walked straight to her bedroom and collapsed onto her bed. The exhaustion from the day hit her all at once, both physically and emotionally. For a while, she stared at the ceiling, letting her mind wander. Then, without thinking too much, she reached for her phone. Social media had become such a big part of her life. It was where she connected with fans, shared updates about her career, and occasionally posted snippets of her personal life. Tonight, however, Caitlin felt compelled to share something different. She opened her notes app and began typing. At first, it was just a jumble of thoughts, a mix of frustration, confusion, and sadness. But as she kept writing, her words started to take shape. Slowly, Caitlin crafted a message that wasn't just about her experience, but also about a larger issue. She wrote about how everyone deserved to be treated with respect, regardless of their status or achievements. She talked about the importance of kindness and empathy, especially in situations where people might feel tempted to judge others based on appearances or assumptions. And most importantly, she emphasized that discrimination in any form was unacceptable. By the time Caitlin finished writing, her post was heartfelt and sincere. She read it over a few times, making sure it sounded authentic and meaningful. Then, with a deep breath, she hit post. Almost immediately, her phone began buzzing with notifications. Likes, comments, and shares poured in faster than she could keep up with. Fans were quick to rally behind her, expressing their outrage over what had happened and offering words of support. Some even tagged the restaurant in their replies, calling them out for their behavior. Within minutes, Caitlin's post had gone viral. But it wasn't just her followers who responded. News outlets picked up the story, turning Caitlin's experience into a national conversation. Headlines like "Sports Star Denied Service a Wake-Up Call" and "Caitlin Clark Speaks Out Against Discrimination" dominated social media feeds and news websites. People everywhere were talking about the incident, sharing their own stories of unfair treatment and discussing ways to combat discrimination in public spaces. The hashtag #ChalkRespectForAll started trending, with thousands of users adding their voices to the movement. What surprised Caitlin the most, though, was the outpouring of solidarity. Athletes, celebrities, and influencers from all walks of life chimed in, praising her for speaking up and using her platform to address such an important issue. Even some of her biggest rivals in the sports world sent messages of support, showing that sometimes unity can transcend competition. One of her teammates even joked, "If I ever see you get denied service again, I'll eat there myself just to prove a point." Caitlin laughed despite herself, grateful for the light-heartedness amidst the seriousness of the situation. As the days passed, the impact of Caitlin's post continued to grow. Local businesses began reaching out to her, asking how they could help promote inclusivity and equality in their own establishments. Many pledged to adopt policies ensuring fair treatment for all customers, regardless of their background or status. Some restaurants even offered free meals to anyone who showed proof of supporting the Respect for All campaign. It was heartwarming to see how a single act of courage could inspire so much positive change. Meanwhile, the restaurant where Caitlin had been denied service scrambled to respond to the backlash. Management issued a public apology, claiming that the decision to turn her away had been made by an employee acting independently and did not reflect the views of the establishment. They promised to investigate the matter thoroughly and take steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. But Caitlin didn't pay much attention to their statement. To her, it wasn't about punishing one business or holding a grudge. It was about creating awareness and encouraging people to think twice before treating others unfairly. In the midst of all the chaos, Caitlin found herself reflecting on the power of her voice. She had always known that being in the public eye came with certain responsibilities, but she hadn't fully grasped the extent of her influence until now. Her simple post had sparked a movement, one that was bigger than her and more impactful than she could have imagined. It made her realize that even in moments of vulnerability, she had the ability to make a difference. One evening, as Caitlin scrolled through the endless stream of messages and comments, she came across a particularly touching note from a young fan. The girl wrote about how she had been bullied at school for standing up to classmates who made fun of another student. Reading Caitlin's post had given her hope and reminded her that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, can lead to meaningful change. "You're my hero," the girl concluded. Caitlin felt tears welling up in her eyes as she read those words. If her experience could inspire even one person to stand up against injustice, then maybe it hadn't been in vain after all. With renewed determination, Caitlin decided to take her efforts a step further. She partnered with organizations focused on combating discrimination and launched a campaign called Open Doors. The initiative aimed to educate businesses and communities about the importance of inclusivity and equality. Through workshops, seminars, and community events, Caitlin worked tirelessly to spread her message and encourage others to join the cause. She traveled to schools, spoke at conferences, and collaborated with local leaders to ensure that her campaign reached as many people as possible. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people signed up to participate in the workshops, eager to learn how they could contribute to a more inclusive society. Businesses donated funds to support the campaign, while volunteers stepped forward to help organize events and spread awareness. Even government officials took notice, proposing legislation to address discriminatory practices in public spaces. Caitlin's efforts were praised by activists and advocates alike, who hailed her as a role model for using her platform for good. Through it all, Caitlin remained grounded and focused. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would always be challenges and setbacks, but she was determined to keep pushing forward. Every speech she gave, every workshop she led, and every interaction she had reinforced her belief that small actions could lead to big changes. And as she stood on stage at a charity gala accepting an award for her work, Caitlin couldn't help but smile. What had started as a painful experience had transformed into something beautiful, a testament to the power of resilience, empathy, and the human spirit. The momentum behind Caitlin Clark's Open Doors campaign continued to grow, spreading like wildfire across cities and towns. What had started as a personal response to an unjust experience was now becoming a nationwide movement, one that resonated with people from all walks of life. Caitlin, who had once felt powerless in the face of discrimination, found herself at the center of something far greater than she could have ever imagined. Her story had struck a chord, not just because it involved a celebrity being treated unfairly, but because it highlighted a universal truth. Everyone deserved respect regardless of their background, status, or identity. Caitlin threw herself into the campaign with relentless energy. She began organizing workshops in collaboration with local community centers, schools, and businesses. These workshops were designed to educate participants about inclusivity, empathy, and the importance of treating others with dignity. The sessions weren't lectures, they were interactive, engaging, and thought-provoking. Caitlin wanted people to leave feeling inspired and equipped to make positive changes in their own lives and communities. She often shared her own experiences during these workshops, using her story to illustrate how small acts of kindness or cruelty could have a profound impact. One workshop took place in a bustling community center on the outskirts of town. The room was packed with attendees ranging from high school students to senior citizens. Caitlin stood at the front, wearing her signature casual outfit, a hoodie and sneakers, and greeted everyone warmly. "Thank you for being here today," she said, her voice steady and sincere. "This isn't about me. It's about all of us working together to create a world where no one feels excluded or unwelcome." She then launched into a series of activities designed to spark meaningful conversations. One exercise involved pairing participants and asking them to share times when they had felt judged or misunderstood. Many of the stories were heartbreaking. A young girl talked about being teased for wearing hand-me-down clothes. A man recounted being denied service at a store because of his accent. Listening to these accounts, Caitlin couldn't help but feel a lump form in her throat. Each story reinforced why this work mattered so much. After the workshops, Caitlin often stayed behind to chat with attendees. People lined up to speak with her, eager to share their thoughts or simply thank her for what she was doing. One woman approached her after a session, tears streaming down her face. "I've been scared to speak up about things like this," she confessed. "But hearing your story gives me hope. If someone as famous as you can stand up against discrimination, then maybe I can too." Caitlin hugged her tightly, whispering words of encouragement. Moments like these reminded her that her efforts were making a difference. As the campaign gained traction, Caitlin also partnered with influential organizations dedicated to fighting discrimination. Together, they hosted large-scale events including panel discussions, fundraisers, and awareness campaigns. One particularly memorable event was held in a downtown auditorium, drawing hundreds of attendees. The theme of the evening was Breaking Barriers, and Caitlin delivered a powerful keynote speech. Standing on stage under bright lights, she spoke candidly about her journey, from the night she was denied service at the restaurant to the moment she decided to turn pain into purpose. "I won't lie to you," Caitlin told the audience, her voice filled with emotion. "That night broke my heart. It made me question whether I belonged, not just in that restaurant, but in this world. But instead of letting bitterness consume me, I chose to fight back, not with anger but with action, because I believe we can change the world, one act of kindness at a time." Her words earned a standing ovation, with many in the crowd moved to tears. Afterward, several attendees approached her to express their gratitude. One man, a restaurant owner himself, handed her his business card. "Your message has inspired me to reevaluate how we treat our customers," he said. "From now on, my staff will undergo training to ensure everyone is welcomed equally." Caitlin smiled, knowing that every step forward, no matter how small, counted. In addition to hosting events, Caitlin leveraged social media to keep the conversation going. She regularly posted updates about the campaign, sharing success stories, and encouraging followers to get involved. She introduced a new hashtag, Kindness Matters, which quickly gained popularity. Fans began posting photos and videos showcasing random acts of kindness, from paying for a stranger's coffee to volunteering at shelters. Caitlyn participated too, surprising unsuspecting fans with gifts or visiting local charities to lend a helping hand. Her authenticity shone through in everything she did, endearing her even more to her supporters. The ripple effects of Caitlyn's campaign extended beyond individual actions. Local businesses, inspired by her message, started implementing policies to promote inclusivity. Some restaurants hung signs in their windows declaring themselves open doors establishments, pledging to serve every customer with respect and fairness. Schools incorporated lessons about empathy and equality into their curriculums, teaching students the value of treating others with compassion. Even policymakers took notice, proposing legislation aimed at addressing discriminatory practices in public spaces. Caitlyn's influence was undeniable, and she humbly accepted the praise that came her way. Despite her growing fame and the recognition she received, Caitlyn remained humble and grounded. She never sought attention for herself. Her focus was always on the cause. When reporters asked her about her motivations, she shrugged modestly. "It's not about me," she insisted. "It's about creating a better future for everyone. If my story can inspire even one person to stand up against injustice, then it's worth it." Caitlyn's dedication didn't go unnoticed. As the campaign gained national attention, invitations poured in for her to speak at conferences, universities, and corporate events. She traveled extensively, delivering speeches that left audiences inspired and motivated. One of her most impactful talks took place at a leadership summit for young athletes. Addressing a packed auditorium of teenagers, Caitlyn encouraged them to use their platforms for good. "Your voice matters," she emphasized. "Don't wait for someone else to fix the problems you see. Be the change." Her advice resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom approached her afterward to share their dreams and aspirations. One aspiring basketball player tearfully thanked Caitlyn for giving her the courage to pursue her passion, despite facing criticism for being a girl in a male-dominated sport. Caitlyn hugged her tightly, reminding her that resilience and self-belief could overcome any obstacle. These interactions fueled Caitlyn's determination to keep pushing forward, knowing that her words had the power to transform lives. Back home, Caitlyn continued balancing her athletic career with her advocacy work. Though her schedule was demanding, she refused to let either aspect suffer. On the court, she played with the same intensity and focus that had earned her accolades. Off the court, she worked tirelessly to expand the reach of open doors. Friends and family marveled at her ability to juggle both responsibilities without losing sight of her values. "She's unstoppable," one teammate joked. "If Caitlyn sets her mind to something, there's no stopping her." Even the restaurant, where Caitlyn had been denied service, attempted to mend fences, issuing multiple apologies and inviting her to visit again. While Caitlyn acknowledged their efforts, she politely declined, choosing instead to focus on the broader mission of promoting inclusivity everywhere. To her, it wasn't about revenge or holding grudges. It was about fostering understanding and unity. As months passed, the Open Doors campaign evolved into a beacon of hope for countless individuals. It wasn't just about combating discrimination anymore. It was about building bridges, breaking down walls, and reminding people of their shared humanity. Caitlyn's vision was simple, yet profound. A world where everyone felt seen, heard, and valued. And though challenges lay ahead, Caitlyn faced them with unwavering resolve, knowing that every step forward brought her closer to achieving that dream. The Open Doors campaign had become more than just a movement. It was now a symbol of hope and resilience. Caitlyn Clark's efforts to combat discrimination and promote inclusivity were gaining global attention, reaching far beyond the borders of her hometown. Her story had inspired people from all corners of the world, and the ripple effects of her work were evident in countless communities. From classrooms to boardrooms, conversations about equality and kindness were flourishing, thanks in large part to Caitlyn's unwavering dedication. As the campaign grew, so did the opportunities for Caitlyn to share her message on bigger stages. Invitations poured in from prestigious organizations, universities, and international forums, eager to hear her speak. One such invitation came from a global summit on social justice held in a bustling metropolitan city. The event brought together leaders, activists, and influencers from around the world to discuss pressing issues affecting society. Caitlin was honored to be among them, standing alongside individuals who had dedicated their lives to creating positive change. On the day of the summit, Caitlin arrived at the venue early, taking a moment to soak in the atmosphere. The auditorium buzzed with energy as attendees mingled, exchanging ideas and sharing stories. When it was her turn to take the stage, Caitlin walked out to thunderous applause. Dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, she looked every bit the role of a leader, confident, composed, and deeply passionate. As she stood behind the podium, she scanned the room, making eye contact with members of the audience before beginning her speech. "Good morning," she started, her voice steady and warm. "When I first began this journey, I never imagined it would lead me here, to a room filled with amazing people who are committed to making the world a better place. But as I look around today, I'm reminded of something important. None of us can do this alone. Change requires collaboration, courage, and compassion." Caitlin then shared her personal story, recounting the night she was denied service at the restaurant and how that painful experience had ignited her desire to fight against discrimination. She spoke candidly about the emotions she had felt, anger, sadness, and frustration, but also about the determination that had driven her to turn adversity into action. Her vulnerability resonated with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement or wiped away tears. "Discrimination isn't always loud or obvious," Caitlin continued. "Sometimes it's subtle, a glance, a whisper, a refusal to acknowledge someone's presence. But its impact is no less damaging. It tells people they don't belong, that they're not worthy of respect, and that's unacceptable." Her words struck a chord, prompting murmurs of agreement throughout the auditorium. Caitlin went on to explain how the Open Doors campaign aimed to dismantle these barriers by fostering empathy and understanding. She highlighted specific initiatives, such as workshops for businesses, educational programs for schools, and partnerships with advocacy groups. "It's not enough to say we believe in equality," she emphasized. "We have to live it, practice it, and teach it to future generations." When Caitlin finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Attendees rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Many approached her afterward, eager to thank her or ask questions about how they could contribute to the cause. One woman, a teacher from another country, handed Caitlin a small handmade bracelet. "This is a token of gratitude," she said. "Your words remind me why I became an educator, to help shape a kinder, fairer world." Caitlin accepted the gift with a smile, touched by the gesture. Beyond the summit, Caitlin's influence continued to spread through various channels. Media outlets featured her story in documentaries, articles, and interviews, amplifying her message to even wider audiences. A major streaming platform released a short film chronicling her journey, capturing both the challenges she faced and the triumphs she achieved. The film ended with a powerful quote from Caitlin: "Kindness costs nothing, but its value is priceless." Viewers were moved to tears, flooding social media with messages of support and admiration. Meanwhile, the Open Doors campaign received significant financial backing from corporations and philanthropists eager to support its mission. Donations poured in, allowing Caitlin and her team to expand their efforts globally. They established partnerships with international organizations focused on human rights and equality, bringing the campaign to countries where discrimination was rampant. In one particularly impactful project, Caitlin traveled to a rural village in Africa to launch a mentorship program for young girls. The program provided education, resources, and encouragement to help them overcome societal barriers and pursue their dreams. Back home, Caitlin remained deeply involved in local initiatives. She visited schools regularly, engaging with students and encouraging them to embrace diversity. During one school visit, she led a classroom discussion about inclusion, asking students to brainstorm ways they could make their peers feel welcome. Their answers ranged from inviting classmates to sit with them at lunch to standing up against bullying. Caitlin praised their creativity and commitment, reminding them that even small actions could create big changes. Her presence in the community extended beyond formal events. Caitlin often surprised fans by showing up unannounced at local charities or volunteering at food banks. On one occasion, she spent an entire afternoon helping pack meals for families in need. When someone recognized her and asked why she was there, she simply replied, "Because it's the right thing to do." Her humility endeared her to those around her, reinforcing her image as a genuine and caring individual. Despite her growing responsibilities, Caitlin never lost sight of her roots. She continued playing basketball with the same passion and intensity that had propelled her to stardom. Her teammates admired her ability to balance sports and activism, often joking that she was superhuman, but Caitlin knew she wasn't perfect. There were days when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming, when doubts crept in and exhaustion threatened to take over. On those days, she leaned on her support system, her family, friends, and mentors, who reminded her of her purpose and encouraged her to keep going. One evening, after a particularly grueling week of travel and campaigning, Caitlin found herself sitting alone on her apartment balcony. The city lights twinkled below, casting a soft glow across the skyline. She reflected on how much her life had changed since that fateful night at the restaurant. What had started as a moment of humiliation had transformed into a lifelong mission, one that had brought joy, inspiration, and connection into her life. Though the road ahead was uncertain, Caitlin felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that she was making a difference. As the months passed, the Open Doors campaign achieved milestones that once seemed impossible. Legislation aimed at addressing discriminatory practices in public spaces was introduced in multiple states, thanks in part to Caitlin's advocacy. Schools adopted curriculums centered on empathy and inclusion, ensuring that future generations would grow up valuing diversity. Businesses proudly displayed Open Doors certifications, signaling their commitment to treating all customers with respect. The campaign had become a beacon of progress, proof that collective action could drive meaningful change. Through it all, Caitlin remained steadfast in her belief that kindness and empathy could conquer prejudice. She often reminded herself, and others, that the journey toward equality was ongoing. "We've come a long way," she told a reporter during an interview. "But there's still so much work to be done. We can't afford to become complacent. Every voice matters, and every effort counts." By the end of the year, Caitlin's contributions to society earned her numerous accolades. She was named one of the most influential figures in sports and social justice, receiving awards from prominent organizations and institutions. Yet, true to her nature, Caitlin accepted these honors humbly, using each acceptance speech as an opportunity to shine a light on the broader cause. "This isn't my victory," she said during one ceremony. "It belongs to everyone who has stood up against discrimination, who has opened their hearts and minds to others. Together, we're building a brighter future." As Caitlin looked back on everything she had accomplished, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. The obstacles she had faced, the rejection, the judgment, the pain, had shaped her into the person she was today, resilient, compassionate, and determined. More importantly, they had given her a platform to inspire others and spark a movement that transcended borders, cultures, and backgrounds. Though the journey was far from over, Caitlin knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, fighting for a world where everyone truly belonged. Caitlin Clark's journey with the Open Doors campaign had reached heights she could scarcely have imagined. What began as a personal response to an act of discrimination had evolved into a global movement, touching lives in ways that transcended borders and cultures. Her relentless dedication to promoting inclusivity and equality had not only transformed her own life, but also inspired countless others to join the fight for a fairer world. As the campaign entered its second year, Caitlin found herself at the forefront of a cultural shift, one that was reshaping how people viewed kindness, empathy, and respect. By now, Caitlin's schedule was packed with speaking engagements, workshops, and community events. She traveled constantly, hopping from city to city to spread her message. Despite the grueling pace, she never complained. Instead, she embraced each opportunity with enthusiasm, knowing that her efforts were making a tangible difference. One of her most memorable trips took her to a remote town nestled in the mountains, where she was invited to speak at a local high school. The students there came from diverse backgrounds, many facing challenges related to poverty, racism, or isolation. Caitlin knew this visit would be special. It always was when she connected with young people. When she arrived at the school, she was greeted by a sea of eager faces. The auditorium was filled to capacity, with students perched on windowsills and sitting cross-legged on the floor just to catch a glimpse of her. Caitlin smiled warmly as she stepped onto the stage, feeling a familiar rush of excitement. She didn't rely on fancy slides or rehearsed speeches. Instead, she spoke directly to the audience, sharing her story in a way that felt raw and authentic. "I want you to know something," Caitlin began, her voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "You don't have to be famous or powerful to make a difference. Some of the biggest changes in the world start with small acts like choosing to include someone who feels left out or standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves." Her words resonated deeply with the students, many of whom nodded in agreement. After her speech, Caitlin opened the floor for questions. Hands shot up immediately, and the room buzzed with curiosity. One student asked how she stayed motivated, despite facing criticism and setbacks. Caitlin thought for a moment before answering honestly. "There are days when I feel tired or discouraged," she admitted. "But then I remember why I started this journey, to create a world where everyone feels valued. That thought keeps me going." Another student, a shy girl sitting near the back, hesitantly raised her hand. When called upon, she stood up and shared her own experience of being bullied at school. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but Caitlin listened intently, offering words of encouragement. "Your strength inspires me," Caitlin told her after she finished. "Don't let anyone dim your light. You have so much to offer the world." The girl beamed, visibly moved by Caitlin's kindness. After the event, Caitlin spent hours chatting with students, signing autographs and taking selfies. Many of them confided in her, sharing their dreams and struggles. One boy handed her a crumpled piece of paper with a drawing of a basketball court. "I want to play like you someday," he said shyly. Caitlin grinned, promising to keep the drawing as a reminder of his ambition. Moments like these reminded her why she did what she did. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about connecting with people and showing them they mattered. As the year progressed, Caitlin's influence continued to grow. The Open Doors campaign received international acclaim, earning partnerships with major organizations and governments committed to advancing equality. In one groundbreaking initiative, Caitlin collaborated with a tech company to develop an app designed to report incidents of discrimination in real time. The app allowed users to document their experiences anonymously, providing valuable data to researchers and policymakers working to address systemic issues. It was hailed as a game changer, empowering individuals to hold institutions accountable while fostering transparency and accountability. Back home, Caitlin remained deeply involved in grassroots efforts. She launched a mentorship program aimed at supporting underprivileged youth, pairing them with mentors who could guide them through challenges and help them achieve their goals. The program quickly gained traction, attracting volunteers from all walks of life. Caitlin personally mentored several participants, meeting with them regularly to discuss their progress and offer advice. One of her mentees, a teenage girl named Maya, dreamed of becoming a scientist but struggled with self-doubt due to her family's financial struggles. Under Caitlin's guidance, Maya applied for scholarships and internships, eventually landing a coveted spot in a prestigious STEM program. When Maya called to share the news, Caitlin cried tears of joy, proud of how far the girl had come. Despite her successes, Caitlin faced moments of doubt and exhaustion. There were nights when she lay awake, wondering if she was doing enough. The weight of responsibility sometimes felt overwhelming, especially when critics questioned her motives or dismissed her efforts as performative. But Caitlin refused to let negativity derail her mission. She leaned on her support system, her family, friends, and colleagues, who reminded her of the countless lives she had touched. "You're changing the world," her best friend told her during a particularly tough week. "That's worth every sleepless night." Caitlin also found solace in her faith and hobbies. She loved spending quiet evenings painting, finding peace in the rhythmic strokes of her brush against canvas. Art became a form of therapy, helping her process emotions and recharge. On weekends, she often visited her parents' house, relishing homemade meals and long conversations around the dinner table. These moments grounded her, reminding her of the simple joys in life. One of the most defining moments of Caitlin's journey came when she was invited to address the United Nations General Assembly. Standing on the iconic stage, surrounded by leaders from around the globe, Caitlin felt a mix of awe and determination. She delivered a powerful speech urging nations to prioritize inclusivity and equality, emphasizing that true progress required collective action. "We cannot build a better future unless we ensure that everyone has a seat at the table," she declared. "Let us work together to break down barriers and open doors for all." Her words earned a standing ovation, with delegates from multiple countries approaching her afterward to express admiration and seek collaboration. Caitlin returned home invigorated, ready to tackle the next phase of her mission. She expanded the Open Doors campaign to include initiatives focused on mental health awareness, recognizing that emotional well-being was closely tied to societal inclusion. Partnering with psychologists and counselors, she organized free workshops and support groups, creating safe spaces for people to share their struggles and find healing. The ripple effects of Caitlin's work were undeniable. Schools adopted anti-bullying programs inspired by her teachings, businesses implemented diversity training sessions, and communities rallied around causes championed by the campaign. Even celebrities and athletes joined forces with Caitlin, using their platforms to amplify her message. Together, they formed a coalition dedicated to driving lasting change, a testament to the power of unity and collaboration. Through it all, Caitlin remained humble and approachable. She continued living a modest lifestyle, avoiding extravagance, despite her growing wealth and influence. Her fans adored her for her authenticity, often commenting on how down-to-earth she seemed. Whether she was playing basketball, volunteering at a shelter, or speaking at a conference, Caitlin carried herself with grace and humility, embodying the values she preached. As the year drew to a close, Caitlin reflected on everything she had accomplished and everything that still needed to be done. She knew the fight for equality was far from over, but she also recognized the progress that had been made. Thanks to her efforts, millions of people now understood the importance of treating others with kindness and respect. Barriers were being broken, minds were being opened, and hearts were being softened. In a final act of gratitude, Caitlin organized a massive celebration to honor the volunteers, donors, and supporters who had contributed to the Open Doors campaign. Held in a sprawling outdoor venue, the event brought together thousands of people from different walks of life. There were performances, speeches, and heartfelt tributes, culminating in a candlelight ceremony symbolizing hope and unity. As Caitlin addressed the crowd, her voice choked with emotion. "This isn't my victory," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It's ours. Together we've shown the world what's possible when we choose love over hate, inclusion over exclusion, and action over silence." The cheers that followed echoed into the night, a testament to the bond forged by shared purpose. Caitlin looked out at the sea of smiling faces, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly present new challenges, she knew she was ready to face them, with courage, compassion, and unwavering resolve. The final chapter of Caitlin Clark's journey with the Open Doors campaign was marked not by an ending, but by a new beginning, a continuation of the legacy she had built. By this point, her name had become synonymous with resilience, empathy, and change. What started as a personal response to an act of discrimination had grown into one of the most impactful movements of its time. touching lives across continents and inspiring generations to come. Yet for Caitlin, the true measure of success wasn't in the accolades or milestones. It was in the everyday moments where kindness triumphed over cruelty and inclusivity replaced exclusion. As the years passed, Caitlin continued to evolve both personally and professionally. Her basketball career reached new heights, earning her titles and records that solidified her place among the greats. But even as she basked in the glory of championships and MVP awards, Caitlin never lost sight of what mattered most: using her platform to create meaningful change. She often joked with her teammates that she played better when she knew she was making a difference off the court. It wasn't just a joke, it was the truth. The balance between sports and activism fueled her passion, pushing her to excel in every aspect of her life. One of the most significant developments during this period was the institutionalization of the Open Doors campaign. Recognizing the need for sustainability, Caitlin worked tirelessly to ensure that the movement would endure long after she stepped away from the spotlight. She established a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting equality and inclusivity, complete with a board of directors, staff members, and volunteers who shared her vision. The organization launched educational programs, research initiatives, and community projects aimed at addressing systemic issues like racism, sexism, and economic inequality. Schools adopted the curriculum developed by the nonprofit, teaching students about empathy, diversity, and social justice from an early age. Businesses partnered with the organization to implement inclusive practices, while governments consulted its experts to craft policies promoting fairness and equity. Caitlin also expanded the campaign's reach internationally, traveling to countries where discrimination remained deeply entrenched. In one particularly moving trip, she visited a refugee camp in the Middle East, meeting families who had fled war and persecution. Sitting on the ground beside children playing makeshift games, Caitlin listened intently as they shared their stories of loss and resilience. She distributed supplies donated by supporters of the Open Doors campaign, including books, toys, and art materials designed to spark creativity and hope. Before leaving, Caitlin promised to advocate for their rights on the global stage, vowing to keep their voices alive in conversations about peace and justice. Back home, Caitlin remained deeply connected to her roots. She frequently returned to her hometown, hosting events and fundraisers to support local causes. One such event was a charity basketball game featuring current and retired athletes, all of whom had been inspired by Caitlin's advocacy. The proceeds went toward building a community center equipped with resources for underprivileged youth, including tutoring services, recreational facilities, and mentorship programs. When the center officially opened its doors, Caitlin stood proudly beside the children it served, cutting the ribbon alongside parents, teachers, and volunteers. "This is what Open Doors is all about," she said during the ceremony, "creating opportunities for everyone to thrive." Despite her busy schedule, Caitlin always made time for the people who mattered most: her family, friends, and fans. She cherished quiet weekends spent at her parents' house, enjoying home-cooked meals and laughter-filled conversations. Her bond with her siblings grew stronger with each passing year, as they supported one another through life's ups and downs. Caitlin often credited her upbringing for shaping her values, emphasizing the importance of humility, hard work, and compassion. "I wouldn't be here without them," she once told a reporter, referring to her loved ones. "They remind me of who I am when the world tries to define me." Her relationship with her fans was equally special. Caitlin maintained an open and authentic connection with her followers, regularly interacting with them on social media and attending fan events. Whether it was responding to messages, sharing updates about her life, or surprising lucky winners, with meet and greets, Caitlin went out of her way to show appreciation for their unwavering support. Fans, in turn, showered her with love and admiration, creating fan art, writing heartfelt letters, and organizing charity drives in her honor. To many, Caitlin wasn't just a role model. She was a beacon of hope, proof that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things. Of course, Caitlin's journey wasn't without challenges. There were times when critics questioned her motives, accusing her of leveraging activism for publicity or financial gain. Others dismissed her efforts as naive or idealistic, arguing that systemic change required more than goodwill and good intentions. Caitlin faced these criticisms head-on, acknowledging the complexities of the issues she sought to address. "I don't claim to have all the answers," she admitted during an interview, "but I do believe in the power of collective action. If we can inspire even one person to treat someone else with kindness, then we've taken a step forward." Through it all, Caitlin leaned on her faith and inner strength. She found solace in prayer, meditation, and creative pursuits like painting and writing. These activities helped her process emotions, recharge her energy, and stay grounded amidst the chaos. On particularly tough days, she reminded herself of the countless lives she had touched: the young girl who dreamed of becoming a scientist, the boy who wanted to play basketball like her, the refugee child whose eyes lit up when she handed him a book. Each story reinforced her belief that no effort was too small, no gesture insignificant. As the decade came to a close, Caitlin reflected on everything she had accomplished, and everything that still needed to be done. The Open Doors campaign had achieved remarkable milestones, from influencing legislation to transforming communities. Yet she knew the fight for equality was far from over. Discrimination persisted in various forms, manifesting in subtle ways that were harder to detect and address. But instead of feeling discouraged, Caitlin felt empowered. She understood that lasting change required patience, persistence, and perseverance. In recognition of her contributions, Caitlin received numerous honors, including prestigious awards and honorary degrees. She was named one of the most influential figures of her generation, celebrated not only for her athletic achievements, but also for her humanitarian efforts. Yet Caitlin accepted these accolades humbly, viewing them as reminders of the responsibility she carried. "These awards belong to everyone who has stood beside me," she said during one acceptance speech. "They're a testament to what we can achieve when we work together." Perhaps the greatest reward for Caitlin was seeing how her message had permeated society. People from all walks of life embraced the principles of kindness, empathy, and inclusion, embodying the spirit of the Open Doors campaign. Strangers performed random acts of kindness, businesses prioritized diversity and representation, and communities rallied around marginalized groups. Even small gestures like holding the door open for someone or offering a kind word became symbols of progress, proof that change began with individual actions. On a crisp autumn evening, Caitlin attended a gala celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Open Doors campaign. The event brought together thousands of supporters, volunteers, and beneficiaries, united by a shared commitment to creating a fairer world. As Caitlin took the stage to deliver her closing remarks, the room fell silent, every eye fixed on her. Clad in a simple yet elegant dress, she looked out at the sea of faces, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. 10 years ago, I walked out of a restaurant feeling hurt and humiliated, she began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. That night could have broken me, but instead, it ignited a fire within me, a desire to fight for a world where no one feels excluded or unwelcome. Today, I stand before you not as a hero, but as a witness to the incredible power of unity and compassion. Tears glistened in her eyes as she continued. This journey has taught me that we are stronger together. When we choose love over hate, understanding over judgment, and action over silence, we create ripples of change that extend far beyond ourselves. Let us continue opening doors, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually, for everyone deserves to feel seen, heard, and valued. The audience erupted in applause, rising to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Caitlin smiled through her tears, overwhelmed by the love and support surrounding her. As she stepped off the stage, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, not because of what she had achieved, but because of the countless lives she had touched along the way. Looking ahead, Caitlin envisioned a future where the Open Doors campaign continued to grow, adapting to new challenges and opportunities. She dreamed of expanding its reach to underserved regions, harnessing technology to amplify its impact, and fostering partnerships that transcended borders. But above all, She hoped to inspire others to carry the torch, to take up the mantle of leadership and drive change in their own unique ways.